Yeah, I think my dad really enjoys it. He's been a mechanic his whole life. I think he enjoys the job satisfaction of it when the car's finished and done, but he genuinely just hates cars.
In the world of YouTube car rebuilding, few names have grown as fast and as powerfully as Mat Armstrong, a creator known for taking completely destroyed supercars and bringing them back to life in ways that many people thought were impossible. From wrecked Lamborghinis to flood-damaged Ferraris, his journey looks like a classic self-made success story on the surface, where a young man with passion, courage, and a camera builds a multi-million-dollar empire from a simple driveway. But when you look a little deeper, the story becomes more complex, more emotional, and far more interesting than it first appears. Because behind every risky decision, every late-night repair, and every moment where things could have gone completely wrong, there's always been one constant figure standing quietly in the background, his father, Tony Armstrong. Unlike Mat, who is known for his bold personality and on-camera energy, Tony represents a completely different world. One built on years of real mechanical experience, discipline, and old-school thinking. He is not just a man who knows how to fix cars. He is someone who understands machines at their core, someone who has spent decades solving problems without the help of social media, modern shortcuts, or viral attention. And while Mat became the face of the brand, the one taking risks and entertaining millions of viewers, Tony remained the silent force that helped make those risks possible in the first place. For years, fans have watched their interactions on screen, often seeing them as a simple father-son duo working together, joking around, and somehow turning broken cars into perfect machines within a single video. But that surface-level view hides a deeper truth, one that has recently started to come out as Tony himself began to speak more openly about what really happened behind the scenes. According to what has been revealed, the journey was never as smooth as it looked, and the success was never built by one person alone. There were moments of real pressure, serious financial risks, and technical challenges that pushed both Mat and Tony to their limits, especially during projects that seemed far beyond what independent builders should even attempt. One of the biggest questions that has now started to spread among fans is whether Mat Armstrong is truly self-made, or whether his father's knowledge, support, and experience played a much bigger role than people originally thought. This question is not just about giving credit. It is about understanding how success actually works in a world where skill, risk, and support all come together. Tony has made it clear in his recent comments that his role was never about taking control or doing everything himself, but rather about being a support system that allowed Mat to push boundaries without completely falling apart when things got difficult. And this idea changes the entire way we look at Mat's journey, because instead of seeing a single person achieving everything alone, we begin to see a partnership built on trust, experience, and shared effort. As we move deeper into their story, especially during major turning points like the Miami House project and the Bugatti rebuild, it becomes clear that what looked like a simple YouTube success story was actually a high-pressure, high-risk journey where every decision could have changed everything, and where the bond between father and son became the most important factor in keeping the entire empire alive. As Mat Armstrong's channel continued to grow, the projects became bigger, the risks became higher, and the expectations from the audience reached a completely new level. But nothing truly tested the strength of his empire like the decision to expand beyond the United Kingdom and take everything to the United States through the ambitious Miami House project. On the surface, it looked like a natural step forward, a sign that Mat had reached a level where he was no longer just rebuilding cars in a driveway, but was now building a global brand with international reach, luxury properties, and access to some of the most exclusive cars in the world. However, what many viewers did not fully understand at the time was just how difficult and risky this move actually was, because moving an entire operation to another country is not just about changing location. It involves completely new systems, different tools, different electrical standards, new suppliers, and a whole new environment where nothing works exactly the same way as before. For someone like Mat, who had built his confidence and workflow in the UK, this sudden shift created a situation where even simple tasks could become complicated, and familiar processes no longer felt reliable. This is where the presence of Tony Armstrong became more important than ever, because while Mat was focused on presenting the project, filming content, and maintaining the excitement for his audience, Tony was quietly dealing with the deeper technical and practical challenges that came with setting up a working garage in a completely new country. According to what Tony later revealed, the Miami project was far from smooth behind the scenes, And there were moments when things nearly fell apart entirely, not just in terms of the build itself, but also in terms of the financial pressure and mental stress that came with such a massive investment. The idea of buying expensive property, transporting tools, managing logistics, and at the same time taking on extremely complex car rebuilds created a level of pressure that was never fully shown on camera. Viewers saw progress, beautiful shots of the location, and the excitement of a new chapter. But behind that, there were long nights, serious doubts, and situations where the entire project seemed like it would fail. One of the biggest challenges came from dealing with high-end manufacturers, especially when it came to sourcing parts for rare and complex cars, where access is often restricted and independent builders are not given the same level of support as official dealerships. This created a situation where Matt was not just fighting mechanical problems, but also facing barriers that were completely outside his control, making the rebuild process even more difficult. Tony described moments where the stress level became so high that filming had to be stopped completely, because what was happening behind the scenes was not something that could easily be turned into entertaining content. Instead of the usual confidence and energy, there were moments of frustration, uncertainty, and pressure that pushed both father and son to their limits. It was during this time that the true nature of their partnership became clear, because while Matt continued to drive the vision and keep the project moving forward, Tony stepped in as a stabilizing force, using his experience and calm approach to solve problems one step at a time. This phase of the journey revealed that success at this level is not just about talent or ambition, but about having the right support system in place when things start to go wrong. And without that support, even the strongest projects can quickly collapse under pressure. While the Miami project alone was enough to test the limits of Mat Armstrong's abilities, the situation became even more intense when one of the most complex and controversial rebuilds entered the picture, the Bugatti project, a challenge that many people, including industry experts, believe should never even be attempted outside of the manufacturer's control. Bugatti is not like other car brands. It operates at a level where every component is engineered with extreme precision and access to parts, tools, and technical data is tightly controlled, making it almost impossible for independent builders to carry out serious repairs without official support. For Matt, taking on such a project was not just another video idea. It was a massive risk that carried both financial and reputational consequences, because failure would not only cost a huge amount of money, but could also damage the credibility he had built over the years. On camera, the project was presented as an exciting challenge, something that pushed the boundaries of what was possible, but according to Tony Armstrong, the reality behind the scenes was far more difficult and stressful than viewers realized. There were moments when the car simply refused to respond, when systems would not activate, and when even basic progress felt impossible, turning what should have been a step-by-step rebuild into a confusing and frustrating battle against unknown problems. One of the biggest issues was a lack of access to official parts and information, which meant that Matt and his team had to rely on their own knowledge, creativity, and persistence to find solutions, often working without the safety net that professional workshops usually have. This is where Tony's role became absolutely critical, because while Matt focused on maintaining the energy of the project and keeping the audience engaged, Tony took on the responsibility of solving the deeper mechanical and electrical challenges that required years of experience to understand. He described nights where he would spend hours studying wiring diagrams, tracing connections, and trying to figure out why certain systems were not working, even when the information needed was not easily available. These were not quick fixes or simple repairs. They were complex problems that required patience, precision, and a deep understanding of how machines work at a fundamental level. According to Tony, there were points during the Bugatti rebuild where the situation became so serious that it felt like the entire project could fail, especially considering how much money had already been invested in both the car and the Miami setup. In those moments, the pressure was not just about finishing a video, it was about protecting everything Matt had built, because one major failure could have had long-lasting consequences. Tony's decision to step in fully during this phase was not about taking control, but about ensuring that the project did not collapse under its own weight. He became the quiet problem solver, the one working behind the scenes to keep everything moving forward even when progress was slow and uncertain. This part of the story reveals a side of the Armstrong journey that is rarely seen on camera, where success is not driven by excitement or entertainment, but by persistence, experience, and the willingness to keep going even when the odds are against you. As the story of the Miami project and the Bugatti rebuild began to spread among fans, a bigger and more controversial question started to take shape, one that had been quietly discussed for years but now moved into the spotlight. How much of Mat Armstrong's success is truly his own, and does the presence of his father change the meaning of being self-made? On platforms like YouTube, the idea of being self-made carries a lot of value, because audiences are naturally drawn to stories where someone builds success from nothing through hard work, risk-taking, and determination, and Mat's journey has often been presented in exactly that way, starting from simple driveway builds and growing into a global brand. However, as more people began to notice Tony's consistent presence and hear about his deeper involvement behind the scenes, some critics started to question whether the story was as independent as it seemed, suggesting that perhaps Mat was not doing everything alone, and that a significant part of the technical success came from his father's decades of experience. This debate, while understandable, also shows how people often misunderstand what success really looks like in the real world, because the idea of a person achieving everything completely alone is rarely true, especially in complex fields like automotive engineering where knowledge, mentorship, and teamwork play a huge role. Tony himself addressed this topic in a way that changed how many people saw the situation, explaining that his role was never about replacing Mat or doing the work for him, but about giving him the confidence to take risks that most people would avoid. According to him, the biggest challenge in projects like the Bugatti rebuild is not just the technical work, but the mental pressure that comes with investing a large amount of money into something that might fail. And in those moments, having someone experienced by your side can make the difference between giving up and pushing forward. This perspective shifts the focus away from the idea of who is doing more work and instead highlights the importance of support systems in achieving big goals. Mat, on the other hand, represents a different kind of strength, one that is not just about technical skill but about vision, creativity, and the ability to turn complex projects into engaging content that millions of people want to watch. He is the one making the decisions, taking the financial risks, and spending countless hours editing and presenting the story in a way that connects with his audience. Tony may have the deep mechanical knowledge, but Mat has the drive to push boundaries and the courage to attempt projects that even experienced professionals might avoid. When you look at their journey from this angle, it becomes clear that their success is not about one person carrying the other, but about two different strengths coming together to create something much bigger than either of them could achieve alone. The debate about being self-made then becomes less about proving independence and more about understanding collaboration, because in reality, success at this level is almost always built on a combination of personal effort, shared knowledge, and the willingness to learn from others while still taking responsibility for the outcome. Tio fully understand how Mat Armstrong reached this level. It is important to look back at the projects that shaped his journey, because each car he rebuilt was not just content for YouTube, but a learning experience that slowly built the foundation of his skills, confidence, and decision-making ability. Long before the Miami house and the Bugatti challenge, there were smaller but equally important projects that tested both Mat and Tony in different ways, and these builds reveal how their partnership developed over time. One of the most talked about examples is the Rolls-Royce Wraith project, a car that came with serious structural damage and was considered too complex for most independent repair shops to even attempt. At first glance, it seemed like another risky decision, but what happened during that build showed how Mat's bold approach and Tony's careful thinking worked together in a balanced way. While Mat pushed forward the idea of restoring the car and turning it into something special, Tony focused on making sure that the structure of the vehicle was safe and properly aligned, paying attention to details that are often invisible to viewers but critical for long-term reliability. This combination allowed them to take on a project that many people believed was impossible and turn it into a success that strengthened their reputation. Another major example is the Rolls-Royce Cullinan, a flood-damaged luxury SUV filled with complex electronics that can easily fail when exposed to water. Modern cars like this are not just mechanical machines. They are filled with advanced systems, sensors, and wiring that require careful handling, and one mistake can lead to permanent damage. During this project, Tony's experience with electrical systems became extremely important as he worked through the complicated wiring and ensured that everything was functioning correctly, while Mat handled the overall build process and presentation. The speed at which they completed the project impressed many viewers, but what mattered more was the level of coordination between them, showing that their workflow had evolved into a system where both of them understood their roles clearly. Then there was the Lamborghini Murcielago, a project that highlighted the emotional and physical challenges of working on high-end exotic cars that had been neglected or poorly repaired in the past. This build required patience, precision, and a willingness to deal with unexpected problems, and it showed how both Matt and Tony had to adapt and support each other throughout the process. Moments like aligning the iconic scissor doors or fixing mechanical issues left by previous repairs demonstrated how their different approaches could come together to solve even the most frustrating problems. These projects, along with many others like the Porsche 911 rebuilds and Ferrari restorations, were not just steps toward bigger and more expensive cars, but were essential parts of a learning journey that prepared them for challenges like the Miami project and the Bugatti rebuild. Each success added confidence, and each failure taught them something new, creating a strong foundation that allowed them to take on risks that would have been impossible at the beginning of their journey. When you look at these builds as a whole, it becomes clear that Matt's success is not based on a single moment or a single project, but on a long process of growth where his father's knowledge and his own determination combine to create a powerful and effective system that continues to evolve with every new challenge they face. Even after overcoming massive challenges like the Miami move and the Bugatti rebuild, Mat Armstrong's journey did not suddenly become easy, and the reality of working on modern hypercars became even clearer with one of his most frustrating and complex projects yet, the Ferrari 296. Unlike older cars that rely more on mechanical systems, the Ferrari 296 represents a new generation performance vehicles that combine traditional engineering with advanced hybrid technology, making them far more difficult to diagnose and repair without access to specialized tools and manufacturer support. From the beginning, this project showed signs of being different, because the damage to the car was not just physical, but also deeply connected to its electronic and hybrid systems, which are designed to operate in very controlled conditions. After purchasing the heavily damaged vehicle, Matt and his team began the rebuild process with their usual confidence, stripping down broken components, sourcing replacement parts, and working through the visible damage step by step. However, the real challenge began when it was time to bring the car back to life, because despite replacing key components and even investing a large amount of money into a new hybrid battery, the car refused to start. This was not a simple issue that could be fixed with basic tools or experience, as the system continued to show errors related to temperature sensors, battery safety, and electronic communication, indicating that the problem was deeper than expected. What made the situation even more difficult was a limited access to official Ferrari diagnostic systems, which are often required to fully understand and reset the complex electronics in modern vehicles. Independent builders like Matt are often placed in a difficult position where they have the skill and determination to repair the physical aspect of the car, but are blocked by software restrictions and manufacturer policies that prevent full access to essential systems. Tony's experience once again played an important role during this stage, but even with his knowledge, there are limits to what can be achieved without the right tools and permissions, and this project highlighted those limits clearly. The frustration of investing time, effort, and money into a rebuild only to face a problem that cannot be solved through traditional methods created a new kind of pressure, one that is less about mechanical skill and more about navigating a system that is controlled by the manufacturer. This situation also reflects a larger issue in the automotive world, where modern cars are becoming increasingly difficult to repair outside of official networks, raising questions about the future of independent builders and the challenges they will face as technology continues to evolve. For Matt, the Ferrari 296 is not just another project, but a reminder that even with experience, support, and determination, there are still barriers that cannot always be overcome easily. It shows that his journey is far from over, and that new challenges will continue to appear as he pushes further into the world of high-end automotive engineering. At the same time, it reinforces the importance of the partnership between him and his father, because while technology may change and become more complex, the value of experience, persistence, and support remains constant, giving them the best possible chance to keep moving forward even when the path ahead is uncertain. Mat Armstrong continues to face new challenges and push deeper into the world of high-end car rebuilding. One thing becomes clearer than ever: the true strength behind his journey is not just skill, money, or even bold decision-making, but the relationship that has quietly supported every step along the way. The story of Matt and his father Tony is not simply about fixing cars or building a YouTube channel. It is about how two different generations, with two very different mindsets, found a way to work together and create something that neither of them could have achieved alone. Mat represents a modern creator, someone who understands content, risk, and the power of storytelling, while Tony represents experience, patience, and the deep technical knowledge that only comes from decades of real-world work. When these two forces come together, they create a balance that allows them to take on challenges that would normally be out of reach for independent builders. The Miami project, the Bugatti rebuild, and the ongoing Ferrari struggle all show that success is not a straight path, but a series of difficult moments where decisions must be made under pressure, often without knowing the outcome. In these moments, it is not just talent that matters, but trust, the trust that comes from knowing someone has your back when things go wrong. Tony's role in Mat's journey is not about taking credit or standing in the spotlight, but about providing that stability, that quiet confidence that allows Mat to keep pushing forward even when the situation becomes overwhelming. At the same time, Mat's willingness to take risks and step into unknown territory shows a level of courage that cannot be taught, proving that while support is important, the drive to succeed must come from within. Together, they have built more than just a successful channel. They have created a legacy that shows what is possible when experience and ambition come together in the right way. Their story also sends a broader message to anyone watching, that success does not have to mean doing everything alone, and that having support does not make achievements any less valuable. Instead, it highlights the idea that real strength often comes from collaboration, from learning, and from trusting the people who stand beside you during the hardest moments. As the automotive world continues to change and new challenges like advanced technology and manufacturer restrictions become more common, the future may become even more difficult for independent builders like Mat. But if their journey so far has proven anything, it is that adaptability, persistence, and strong relationships can overcome even the toughest obstacles. The questions about whether Mat is truly self-made may continue, and debates among fans may never fully settle. But the reality is far more meaningful than a simple label. What we are witnessing is not just the rise of a YouTube creator, but the evolution of a partnership that turns impossible ideas into reality, one project at a time. Looking ahead, the journey of Mat Armstrong and his father Tony is far from reaching its final chapter, and in many ways, it feels like they are only now entering the most challenging phase of their story, where the stakes are higher, the cars are more complex, and the margin for error is smaller than ever before. The rise of hybrid systems, locked software, and strict manufacturer control means that future projects will not just test their mechanical skills, but also their ability to adapt to an industry that is becoming less open to independent repair and experimentation. This creates a situation where every new build is not just about fixing a car, but about proving that knowledge, creativity, and persistence can still compete with large corporations and factory control systems. For Mat, this means continuing to take risks that most people would avoid, investing time and money into projects that may not always succeed, and trusting that the same mindset that brought him this far will carry him through whatever comes next. For Tony, it means continuing to evolve as well, applying decades of experience to problems that did not exist when he first started his career, and finding ways to bridge the gap between traditional mechanical understanding and modern technological complexity. Together, they represent a rare combination that is becoming increasingly important in today's world, where old-school knowledge and new-school thinking must work side by side to overcome challenges that neither could solve alone. Their story also raises important questions about the future of the automotive industry and the role of independent builders within it. Because if even skilled individuals like Mat and Tony face such difficulties in accessing parts, tools, and information, it suggests that the gap between manufacturers and independent repairers may continue to grow. This makes their journey not just personal, but also symbolic of a larger struggle that many people in the automotive community can relate to. At the same time, their success shows that it is still possible to break through these barriers with enough determination and the right support system. The bond between father and son remains a central force that drives everything forward, providing both stability and motivation in equal measure. No matter how difficult the projects become or how many obstacles stand in their way, that connection continues to be the one thing that cannot be replaced or restricted. And as viewers continue to watch, comment, and debate the details of their journey, one thing remains certain. This is not just a story about cars or YouTube success, but about resilience, partnership, and the ability to keep moving forward even when the odds seem impossible. Whether it's a silent garage in the UK or a high-pressure workshop in Miami, the same dynamic continues to play out, with Matt pushing boundaries and Tony ensuring that those boundaries do not break everything apart. The future may be uncertain. The challenges may grow even larger. But if their past has shown anything, it is that they will continue to face those challenges together, turning every problem into another chapter in a story that is still being written, and one that audiences around the world are still eager to follow until the very end, to the heart of everything that surrounds Mat Armstrong's rise. The debates about self-made success and the technical battle behind every rebuild. There is still a simple truth that often gets lost in the noise of online opinions and viral content. What makes this story so compelling is not just the cars, not just the money, and not even the dramatic failures or impossible repairs, but the human connection that runs through it all, especially the relationship between a father and a son who found a way to build something meaningful together in a world that is constantly changing.